I'm Annaline. Welcome to my class on an introduction to the recorder for SCA purposes. This class is for beginners and it's split across two videos. The first video will cover the history and background of the instrument as well as some techniques on how to play well for beginners. The second video will teach a simple tune that you can play at SCA events for dancing or just as a performance. So, what exactly is a recorder? The instrument that we know today is not entirely dissimilar to the instrument as it was played in period. They became very popular around the second half of the 15th century. Earlier examples of instruments do exist, but their popularity rose around that time, and it continued to rise through to the Baroque period. Their popularity was probably at its peak in the Baroque period, which is a bit after our time. Our modern instruments are based on the Baroque instrument. They're not entirely dissimilar to the period instruments. There are a few small differences that I'll show you. So, most of you probably have seen one of these before. Made of plastic, beloved of primary school children around the world. They come in three parts: a headpiece, which has the mouth part and a whistle, and two lower portions. This part, this column, with one hole in the back and several holes down the front, and the footpiece, which has the final fingering hole and flares at the base. And they go together to make a wonderful noise when your child brings it home from primary school. Obviously, in period, recorders wouldn't have been made of plastic. They would have been more likely to be made of wood or of ivory, although for ethical reasons, obviously we don't want to use ivory instruments today. You can also find a modern recorder made of wood. Now, that's not the only reason. This one is the more period looking of my two instruments that I'm showing you today. This one is only in two parts, so again, the head can detach, mouthpiece and whistle together. But the body of this one is a single piece to the end. In the SCA period, recorders were usually of one piece, sometimes of two, so this instrument already is a lot more period than my other example here. Now, the plastic ones are the easiest to come by. They shouldn't be too expensive. The plastic might not look the part, and it can sound a little more shrill than wooden recorders, but they are easy to clean, they're easy to look after, they're less temperamental, they don't worry too much about humidity or temperature or anything like that. They're a bit more of a forgiving instrument. Wooden instruments are also fairly easy to come by. This one was quite cheap. I found it in Lidl. At Christmas time they often have instruments out, and this was an inexpensive buy. It's true, it's not the prettiest wooden recorder I've ever seen, and it's not the highest quality either, but the tone is more mellow than the plastic, which can sound a little shrill. So you don't have to break the bank to get yourself a nice period-looking instrument, really. Both of my instruments are the soprano or descant size of recorder. Recorders in our period did come in a number of different sizes, which corresponded to a number of different pitches. As they increase in size, the pitch lowers, and unfortunately the price will also increase. Most commonly available, you can find a soprano recorder, alto recorders, which is the next size, tenor and bass. All should be readily available from most music shops. If you've already got one of these and perhaps you're looking to upgrade to a larger instrument, the tenor recorder uses the same fingering as the soprano. Alto and bass do use different fingering. We're not going to learn that today. Other sizes do exist, but are less commonly played. Alright, so it's time to start actually playing. The first thing you want to do is stand up nice and straight, or in my case, if you're feeling a little tired, then remaining seated is fine, but you're going to want to sit up as straight as you can. Your shoulders back and down, so that you have plenty of space in the diaphragm to take a nice deep breath to support your playing. If you run out of breath halfway through a note, you're going to hear horrible wobbles and squeaks, and you don't want that. So, nice and straight posture is the first step. Of course, then we're going to pick up the instrument. In modern practice, we play with the left hand at the top. In the SCA period, this wasn't standardized. You can find illustrations of people playing with either hand at the top or the bottom of the instrument. We'll stay with the left hand at the top because if you've learned at all in the past, this is how you would have learned, and it's best not to fight that muscle memory. At the back of the instrument, you'll see that there is a single hole. Your left thumb will cover this. Make sure that you're using the pad of your left thumb, not the tip, the pad, to cover that hole. With that hole covered, you're going to take your index finger, your left index finger, and cover the first hole at the front of the instrument, again using the pad of the finger and not the tip. The middle finger down next, and the ring finger of the left hand. Your left pinky has nothing to do. Your right hand, you'll cover the next hole down with your right index finger, right middle finger, right ring finger, and your right pinky has a little bit of work to do. It covers the last hole on the instrument. Your right thumb should naturally grip behind the instrument, even when the fingers are off in a position where I'm playing a different note that doesn't need all of the fingers down. The right thumb remains there to support the instrument. You do need to make sure that the holes are properly covered with the pads of your fingers. Pay particular attention to the last two holes. They each have two parts to them. Sometimes people forget and don't properly cover both sides of the hole, which will give you an awkward semitone, or you might be sharp if you don't cover them correctly. The next thing that you're going to need to do is place the instrument between your lips. Now, you don't need to put it too far into your mouth. Your teeth should be nowhere near it. Your tongue also should be nowhere near it. It needs to just gently rest between your lips. Before you do this, it's best to swallow any extra saliva that might be in your mouth. You don't want the instrument to become too moist. Gently rest the mouthpiece on your lower lip and allow your upper lip to close over it. You don't need to make a duck face. None of that. It rests on the lower lip, top lip just closes over it. And when you blow out, you should find that there is a steady note. You don't want it to be wavering up and down, and you don't want it to be squeaking or shrieking at you. So, why does that sometimes happen? Well, if you don't blow hard enough, sometimes it will waver. Okay, it's a bit of a wimpy sound, we don't really want that, so it needs to be firm and steady. On the other hand, if you heard a bit of a shriek, like a chicken being tortured, then probably you're blowing a little bit too hard, and you might want to just tone it down a little. I'll demonstrate what it sounds like. You may wish to cover your ears. Not the most pleasant sound, so if that's the result you're getting, you need to blow a little less firmly. Keep it steady as you blow. Maybe pause this video until you've practiced that a few times and you're happy with the sound you're getting. Now we're going to learn how to play the different notes in the scale. We'll start at the bottom, the lowest note this instrument can produce, which is a C, with every hole covered. Again, make sure that your fingers are properly covering those holes. Do make sure that your pads of your fingers are down. This will be C. We lift the lowest finger, that right pinky finger, to play D. One more finger comes off to play E. F isn't exactly what you might expect. We do lift off the next finger, but we also need to place the lowest two down again, because otherwise your F will be sharp. Lift off all the right hand fingers from the front, but leave the right thumb supporting. With all of the left fingers down, this is G. One more comes off for A. And again for B. And C is not what you might expect. The second finger has to come back down, and the top finger lifts off. The hole at the back is still covered by the left thumb. So our thumbs don't move for any of the notes in that scale. We're only adjusting the fingers at the front to produce a scale from C up to a high C. Higher notes are a little bit different, but we're not doing those today. Now that we can play some different notes, it's time to focus on how we can make a clear distinction between the sounds as we move from note to note. When you're playing, it can be tempting to try and control the sound just with your breath alone, but this doesn't give the best result. If you just try to use your breath to control the notes, it'll sound a bit like this. You can hear that it's kind of awkward going from note to note because my airflow doesn't really cut off in between notes and there's not a clear distinction between them. So to make a nice clear distinction, what you do is you need to be saying with your tongue da or ga. Now you're not actually saying it, but your tongue will move to meet the top of your mouth as if you were saying da ga, and it will sound like this. That's all the technique that we'll be covering in this video. So you probably want to practice that a little bit so that you can get a nice clear sound out of your instrument before we learn how to play a tune in the next video. See you then.